This is the untold truth about breaking into consulting as someone that doesn't come from business background. It is the same roadmap I personally used to get interview opportunities from McKinsey in London office, and also the same process to help many of my students to get big offers from EY and boutique consulting firms. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what are consulting firms looking for, what kind of experiences can you get and write on your CV, and how do you really eventually crack the recruitment process to get into the big firms like MBB. The first thing you need to understand is, what do consulting firms do? Consulting firms typically help businesses to improve their sales, their performance and profitability, and you're hired for your research abilities and also business analytical skills. And when I was studying back at Imperial College, I studied life sciences, and I knew consulting was something that a lot of students really want to get into because it's one of the super cool industries that you can learn so many different projects and industries, and it really pays you big check. And there's different type of project that you will be involved as a consultant working for consulting firms, ranging from market research, where you look into the market potential, analyze whether client could really fit within the market share. Then you also get involved in M&A project, where you help company acquire and get acquired throughout the acquisition process. You also need to work at profitability and competitive analysis. You also need to help other clients as well for due diligence work, for example, and different types of work. And then if we were to break consulting industry into major categories based on which department and which type of project that they mostly focus on, it ranges all the way from strategy consulting to management consulting, and you can also break it further into marketing agency, sales. You can also break it into tech, operation, implementation, and all different types of consulting projects. But you might ask this question: all of these sound super complicated, and how do I even know what kind of framework do I need to know, which I'm going to talk about later on in this video. But going back to different types of consulting, that is where you can actually utilize your previous academic experience, your project, to then see which one will be the best fit for you. So typically, as a rule of thumb, if you want to go into strategy and management consulting, these two typically are pretty background agnostic, meaning that they really welcome students coming from any kind of background. You can be studying history, geology, you can be studying science, engineering. As long as you have the 4 key skills that they're looking for, which I'm going to talk about it very soon, then you are pretty qualified to apply for consulting. And then for the rest of the type of consulting, where you have life science, which is industry specific, you have engineering, you have operation, you have implementation, you have financial advisory, different type of consulting. That is where you can be quite industry specific. Let's say if you studied life sciences, you can go into life science consulting. If you have healthcare background, you can go into healthcare consulting, where your clients are going to be typically hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and because you have that technical knowledge, it's going to help you so much more and help you establish the authority when you're talking to clients and really understand what they're actually doing in much more details. Likewise, if you have studied sort of engineering, you can go into engineering consulting firms, for example, like Atkin, Arup. They do a lot of network engineering, electricity or nuclear power, and roadmap design. All of these are actually involved in traditional engineering consulting firms. And as well, like software engineering, you also have tech engineering consulting firms. So companies like Capgemini and Accenture, they really welcome students that come from typical coding backgrounds, because you can there's 2 types as well. You can decide either to be the software engineering type of a consultant, where you actually build different softwares for clients, or you can be more like the business side, where you look at what kind of infrastructure do they have for their cloud, for their different data structure, and then you can advise them, what kind of setup is the best to be more cost efficient, and it's easier for the rest of the engineers to actually. And if you come from finance, accounting background, you can always rely on the financial advisory or financial consulting companies, which are typically Big 4, Big 8, or FTI, which is more economy-related type of consulting firms. Utilize your academic background, the knowledge, but also give you that broader perspective of how you can help companies to overall improve their finance side. So by this point, you should have pretty good understanding what is actually consulting, what kind of consulting there are, and which one might be better for you based on your previous experience, educational background, and what you might actually enjoy doing. Now the next step is, what are the key 4 skills that consulting firms are actually looking for on top of some technical knowledge? So based on what McKinsey, which is the top one consulting firm, says, and my personal experience of applying to lots of consulting firms, I would say there are four key skills that consulting firms are really looking for. So number one, you have entrepreneurial spirit, meaning are you someone who really loves initiating something new and has the ability to build something out of scratch, and you have that strong desire to build something and you have the ability to actually execute it. And then number two, are you a problem solver? Are you someone who actually enjoys solving problems? You can approach it, you can analyze the root of cause and brainstorm and come up with different solutions and eventually help you solve that problem. And you're not somebody whenever there's a problem that comes up and you just, start to shy away from the problem. You need to have both the attitude, which is loving problem solving, and also the skill of doing problem solving. Number three, are you someone who has strong leadership skills? Because when you are a consultant, you need to demonstrate a certain degree of authority to your clients and the ability to guide your client through beginning to the end and deliver a final recommendation. That comes from leadership. And oftentimes, you also need to manage a lot of vendors and also contractors to deliver data for you when you are doing that project for clients. So that means you need to really have very strong leadership slash project management skills. And number four is innovative thinking. This is super important in consulting industry because you always want to think outside of the box. Think about it. Fortune 500 companies, their C-suites are hiring McKinsey, BCG, and Bain to really help them to think outside the box because they have processes and routines where they have been using for the past few decades, and now they need something that's completely new, either that's technology or new way of processing or new way of like hiring. All of these new solutions you need to be able to think of them and have the ability to evaluate which of them is better. So as long as you can demonstrate all of these four skills, doesn't matter if you study math or medicine or even arts, as long as you can demonstrate these four different skills through your previous experience, project, academics, competition, society work, volunteering, internships, you can literally brainstorm how you can find and demonstrate these four skills from what kind of experiences, then you are 100% eligible to go for consulting. Well, the next part really is, how does the recruitment process actually look like and what do I need to prepare in order to break into each of them? So typically for consulting, there are two categories of recruitment process. You have what we call, the MBB type of traditional, fairly elite consulting firms, or you have sort of okay average consulting firms in which some of them, the key differentiator is, do they do case interviews, right? And if we're looking at, MBB sort of elite consulting firms, the top tier, the tier one, usually tier two as well, they are going to at some point involve you in the case interview, which is usually done in a one-to-one basis. And for let's say okay average tier three, tier two, kind of consulting firms, then they don't necessarily have case interview like big four or big eight. They do some form of like consulting, accounting or financial advisory, deal advisory, but they don't have that one-to-one case interview like the McKinsey or BCG LEK type of stuff. So both of these categories of consulting firms, they have 80% of the process apart from the interview, case interview, which means first stage is CV, sometimes cover letter, you have application form. If it's entry level or graduate position, you also have to do online tests, in which there's a lot we can talk about, different types of online tests, which I'm going to do a separate video to talk about it. And then you also have like the general fit culture slash fit interview, and then you have case interview. This is where it differentiates. If it's a traditional MBB elite consulting firms, you have the one-to-one case. You might do 4 cases for McKinsey, which is 2 rounds. You might just need to do one round and do with 2 cases. For companies like EY Parthenon, if it's for like the average consulting firm, which is not super competitive, then you might not even need to do case interview. You might need to do individual presentation or group case interview, which is also called assessment center, as part of the graduate scheme application process. And what is also pretty common, after you have done the technical side, which is case interview or the group exercise, you also have a partner interview. So you're going to essentially interview with someone who's super senior on the firm. And then at that point, really for them to just get to know you a little bit more, understand your motivation, to see if you're a culture fit with a firm. And that is literally the last stage before you get the offer. Which also leads me to talk about case interview. Now, case interview is incredibly important, but it's also very difficult, especially if you don't come from business background. because usually what they're testing is the ability for candidate to understand the case, to ask the right question, to synthesize the information, to make logic assumption, and in the end to make the right conclusion for the client. So typically it's going to take a lot of effort if you're someone who's super new to the concept of case interview. So the most basic structure of case interview is what we call market sizing, which is beginner friendly or beginner level of case interview. And here's what I've got for you guys. If you're interested in learning more about case interview, specifically market sizing case interview, go to my Instagram at Mingke Career, DM market. I'm going to send you a free market sizing case that you can practice by yourself. And we're also attaching 2 ways of solving this market sizing question so that you can see how typically a case interview looks like at level 1. If you want to learn why you get rejected after interviews, click the button below and I'll see you on the other side.